You're good to go.
Well, welcome everybody. We appreciate your second meeting of the Mayor's Housing Study Committee, and just appreciate everybody being a part of this. We've got almost everybody out there today. Well, we actually missed a couple last time, but you know, we got great involvement. We got a great presentation, I think, in front of you. I do want to go over a couple of things for you. I think it's always important, if I could take a minute or two to do this, to keep our focus on what we're all about here. I think each meeting we ought to revisit that and you know, really get in our minds what we're trying to achieve here. Just remind you that the primary goal of this committee is to make any kind of recommendations to the town board regarding the following items. And maybe more. We can always add to this if we run into things. First of all, we need to answer the question, the overarching question: does the town need to prepare a comprehensive housing plan or not? If not, that's okay. If Cornelius does need a plan, what does it include and how comprehensive will it be? This meeting that we're getting ready to go into today is focused on gentrification versus redevelopment, a big topic that I have, with the help of a couple folks on this call today, have helped me get a grip on and understand. I think my learning curve has gone a long way, and I believe everybody's will that's hearing this story. Should the town participate in neighborhood redevelopment or not? It is not an easy question, certainly, and it's not a cheap perspective. As we noted, we get a number of questions as to why the town is not encouraging funding housing at some scale level, such as the city of Charlotte does in Mecklenburg County. The questions as such include the fact that Charlotte just passed an affordable housing bond, a huge bond. Is Cornelius going to consider that or not? Charlotte also just subsidized a private development with $3 million plus public dollars to ensure affordability. What is Cornelius contributing to an effort like that? Number 4 is our future meetings will focus on available grants and how the town would participate in funding affordable housing overall. CDBG home repair, down payment assistance, neighborhood planning efforts, infrastructure improvements, etc., as well as rental subsidiaries and employee housing subsidies will all be a part of that consideration as we move forward. Land use considerations are certainly part of the equation, and we will talk about and think about such things as density, mixed use, and housing types. The immediate and long-term budget goals and strategies, we want to note that the articles that Wayne sent you, I think, will be instrumental in providing, you know, the committee members a lot of good information, which should stimulate some very nice discussion along the way. So that's kind of where we're headed, and I look forward to our journey together. We want to move this along. You'll see a little bit of an increase in pace of our meetings, and thank you for hanging with us through that. But I think nobody likes a committee that continues indefinitely. We will not be doing that. We really need to reach some conclusions. I'll be pushing you for that, and I'm sure our other commissioners that are part of this committee will be doing the same. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Wayne and let you kick us off and give us a little bit of an overview of the issues at hand that we're talking about today, i.e. redevelopment versus gentrification. Big topic throughout our community, but particularly in the Smithville area. And again, that's where I have learned a lot from these folks, and we'll turn that over to you, Wayne, to introduce our guest and to elaborate a little bit. Wayne, you out there?
Well, Wayne just stepped away from his desk while you were talking. And he also had a mask. He also put a mask on for some reason.
Okay. Well, maybe he had a little issue to arise. You never know up there at Town Hall. So,
There he is.
Daryl Williams. Oh, okay. Wayne, are you back?
Doesn't have his earpieces in.
We'll give Wayne just a second to add his 2 cents on these topics, and then we'll move into their direct conversation. So Wayne, I was calling on you to kick us off if you're out there and can do that.
Wayne must be trying to keep COVID from coming through the computer.
I think you're right. There you go, buddy. I'll guarantee you. So we're just gonna move on into it. You the man anyway. First of all, there is let me just make a few comments about the Smithfield Community Coalition and the private efforts going on of the Smithfield neighborhood. It's very important to really look at and I think examine all the great work that our very own Smithfield neighborhood, our very own historic African-American community has contributed to really get us ahead of the 8 ball here just a little bit. When I became mayor, I took it on as a need to really open up our communications. I've gone to the Smithfield Community Coalition's meetings forever, ever since I've been in public office, back when I was on the board, and have continued to do that. We've had a little hiatus here over the last 8 months, as you can imagine, with not being able to have those meetings, but work has continued by many folks that are part of the Smithfield Coalition. Much of that effort's led by Willie Jones, Lisa Mayhew, Ronnie Potts, John Quinn, and many others. I have met with that group consistently over the more than 3 years that I've been mayor now, monthly. It's been monthly meetings. A lot of work has gone on, and I want to thank Willie and the entire group for the efforts that you've made. Ron is probably out there on this call today. I missed our first one because he was working in the voting precinct downstairs in Town Hall, but a lot of work has gone on. I'm really, really proud of, I think, our conversations. I'm really proud of the commitment this group has to make Smithville a better place. And now's the time. So, Wayne, I was just kicking off this particular topic, and I don't know if you have anything to add before we jump into our guest speakers, but if you do, feel free to do that, and go ahead and introduce Daryl as well.
Thank you, Mayor, and I apologize for my technical difficulties. I'm now on Aaron Tucker's computer, so it probably says I'm Aaron Tucker now. But just a few quick points. Let's see, how do I advance this, Aaron? Here we go. Just a few slides here before we introduce Willie. Where are we and where are we going? Today's agenda, we will begin with a broader discussion of redevelopment versus gentrification. And this is really the broadest thing that we'll discuss, because a lot of what we'll discuss deal with more smaller budgetary items, things that we have more direct control over. But this is really a major task that impacts neighborhoods and entire sections of town. So it's really important that we hear from the committee about how important it is to you that the town play a role and what type of role we might play in looking at redevelopment plans or looking at gentrification. Where we will go after today is on December 2nd at 3 o'clock. That'll be our next meeting. That's a Wednesday. we'll have Victoria Avramovic from Central Iowa Regional Council. She'll talk about available grants and funding sources. She'll be talking about CDBG, HUD, HOME, what is currently available from the federal and state government and how to tap into those funding sources. And then on December 14th at 2:30, that's a Monday, we'll talk about alternative programs such as employee housing incentives, land use discussion, and then hopefully start at that December meeting, putting together outlines of what our recommendations to the town board would be. We'll follow that up with 2 meetings in January where we will essentially wrap this up, and we'll be making recommendations at each one. And Roger Walden is on our call today. Roger will be available at our future meetings, and we're going to have Roger speak more at a future meeting and talk about and be available for your questions about what might a plan look like, what could a plan involve if we choose to do one. One thing that you'll hear from Victoria next week is outside of Charlotte and Mecklenburg County, none of the towns in Mecklenburg have a plan. Even Davidson, that has a healthy housing program, does not necessarily have a plan. So it'll be interesting how we move forward and how we discuss that. So let me just give a brief intro before we get into Willie and Daryl. What is gentrification? And I took this definition right out of Webster's dictionary. Gentrification is a process of changing the character of a neighborhood through the influx of more affluent residents and businesses. It is a good, common, and controversial topic in politics and in urban planning. Gentrification often increases the economic value of a neighborhood, but the resulting demographic change is frequently a cause of controversy. Gentrification often shifts a neighborhood's racial, ethnic composition and average household income by developing new, more expensive housing and businesses in a gentrified architectural style and improving resources. Now, on the flip side, you might look at redevelopment. Redevelopment is a tool that governments can use to revitalize a given area. Where redevelopment yields the buildings and structures that support the community, revitalization is the overarching set of policies and processes that brings back and sustains the life of a community. Government redevelopment plans focus on policies and goals that allow neighborhood residents to choose to stay and may allow others to relocate at more affordable price points. Strategies often include percentage of income factors, reduced cost of development due to government subsidy, which is direct funding from a government, land acquisition and donation, infrastructure such as water, sewer, sidewalks, streets, etc. So I start off with those 2 definitions, and I think that leads us right into the case study of our Smithville neighborhood. And I apologize, I couldn't hear the mayor, but I think he was introducing Willie Jones. Willie has a vast background in housing across our country. He's retired and chosen to locate here in Cornelius, but I would hazard to say, I think Willie's probably working as hard in retirement as he did probably when he was actually employed. And one of the things that Willie is doing is volunteering and working very hard with the Smithville Community Coalition. So Willie, I'm going to turn it over to you and let you introduce what the coalition is and what your goals and objectives are for revitalization and redevelopment in the Smithville neighborhood. So Aaron, if you can help me turn off the sharing screen here. Stop share. And Willie, it's up. You can turn the share on and you can go. You might be muted there, Willie. There you
go. Thanks. And thank you, thank you, Wayne, and thank you, Mayor. I think particularly for our monthly meetings that we now have, which I think we're all growing in our understanding of how to tackle some of these issues. And I think our collaboration, has been something that we hope will will aid in the thinking of other parts of Cornelius. In terms of, I joined the board, but the Smithfield Community Coalition had been alive and active for a long time, most recently reconstituted in 2011. And under the leadership of residents of Smithfield like Ron Potts, Lisa Mayhew Jones, a series of very good people who primarily live in Smithfield. What we did was had a series of community meetings to try to get a handle on what the future of Smithfield would look like. And so this presentation is an attempt to share with you the underlying principles, some of our goals and objectives, and also to give you a chance to look at our master plan. I wanted to say to start with that it's been a privilege to work with Neighboring Concepts, and we we created the goals and objectives and asked them to create the physical forms that would look like. And so we'll launch into this. The revitalization program is constructed around 6 principles. The first one is no residents in currently occupied homes will be displaced. The new Smithfield will honor its heritage as a historically African-American neighborhood. The new neighborhood will be approximately 50% existing and 50% new. Seniors who own their homes can continue to live in them until they are ready to sell in the future. This phase of the revitalization will be limited to blighted sections of Smithfield, that is, those with empty land and vacant buildings. The new community will be developed in such a way that current residents will not be displaced by escalating real estate taxes. New development in Smithfield will be mixed income and mixed tenure, covering a spectrum from 30% of the AMI to 120% of the AMI, with most of the new development targeting incomes at or around 80% of the area median income. It's a 3-part program. The first part is raising approximately $250,000, which would be $10,000 per house times 25 houses, to create a loan pool that will allow us to provide a second mortgage for up to 25 seniors living in Smithfield in return for a right of first refusal to purchase their home when they decide to leave it. This second mortgage will not require payments from the homeowner, but repaid upon sale of the house in the future. That can also be rolled over if the house is turned over to an heir. The goal of this is kind of twofold. One is to give us the opportunity to control as much land as possible. The second is there are a number of residents who are senior and need home repairs, but can't afford to do home repairs. That is, they can't go out and get financing for home repairs. So creating some fund that allows them to be able to do that, retain their home, and not have to do debt service is important. Second part of the program is all occupied homes which do not want to participate in the program can be sold on the open market just as they can be sold now. We will attempt to accommodate any current homeowner south of Catawba who wants to sell their home to the revitalization effort. Third, we will have home builders and a rental development partner build on currently vacant properties. All land purchase will be subject to long-term income restrictions. We've interviewed experienced potential development partners, and we've vetted elements of this contract, of this concept prior to going public with it. The updated plan that we've been working on since COVID hit is 160. Let me step back. There's an on-site unit and an on-site component and off-site component. The on-site component, which covers Catawba, the part of Smithfield that is south of Catawba, down to South Hill Street to Nanny Potts. The off-site would be the section, the privately owned parcels that are bisected by Nanny Potts Lane. The on-site, there'd be roughly 67 to 70 rental units with a percentage of those at 50%, 40%, and 30% of AMI. This allows us to accommodate any seniors who want to sell and move into a more secure or stable rental environment. But also it's basically workforce housing. It's the type of housing that people in service industry, the rents are set to target people who basically do service work. We call them first responders, et cetera, but those incomes. Then we have approximately 100 units on site with about a third targeting people who are at 60% of the AMI, another third targeting people who are about 80% or less of AMI, and the final third targeting people who are 120% or less of the AMI. The off-site program would be done in partnership with private developers or whoever purchases the land. It's likely to be mostly market rentals and ownership products. The reason we include this is that the combination of on-site and off-site creates tax increment to fund the program. Let me stop for a second and explain tax increment. The underlying economic principle here is that most of the land in Smithville is taxed as land only. So if you get the tax bills as you go on the county website, you know, it has a land component and a house component. But when the land is vacant, you only receive taxes on the land. And so the way this works is the more housing you create, the larger an increment of new taxes are generated. And so the way the program pays for itself is the new revenue from new units created drives it. Now, where did this come from? Basically, this has been the operating principle since the 1950s with urban renewal, but without the urban renewal, gentrification and displacement. And so it essentially stretches the cost of acquisition over a 20-year to 25-year period. And so we've taken a cut at calculating what the off-site increment would be also to make sure that we create a program that essentially pays for itself in a defined period of time. The primary funding sources that we're looking for here are support from Mecklenburg County for acquisition, support from Charlotte Water for some infrastructure improvements, philanthropy for the right of first refusal loans, and lot sales. The reason this has to be done this particular way is that North Mecklenburg does not have access to a trust fund or comparable resources like Charlotte. Also, Cornelius's tax base is too small to do this by itself. So county funds will be repaid over time from the increment for the new real estate tax revenues. Pricing structure. How much will housing cost? We've put this together in a way that had to be adjusted from 2019 to 2020. We moved this into 2021 dollars. At first, we had builders who could do this at $105 a square foot. Upon revisiting them, it was 115 to 117 a square foot, which is a pretty healthy jump in a relatively short period of time. So we had to make some adjustments, but the way the program basically functions is the cost of a 1,500 square foot house is about $180,000, including, you know, from the pad up. So the cost of infrastructure and acquisition is being funded by public dollars. So really what you're doing is you're structuring pricing so that it's tied to the actual cost of producing housing, or something relatively close to the actual cost of producing housing. And then what we do is create a lot sale price that covers things like overlot grading and any other program related costs that are stuck in there. And so we can take our lot prices for low income, for people at the lower end of the AMI spectrum, and sell those lots much cheaper than people who are at the upper end of the income spectrum. So we're projecting that our lot prices can run from $5,000 per lot to $75,000 per lot based on income. The other costs, which really run about 10%, about 10% of the cost of the house, are put in there, and then you come to a total sales price of between $200,000 and $280,000. Those are the points we're projecting based on 2021 dollars. Why does this work? First off, there are 4 elements driving the savings here. Site acquisition costs are funded with public funds and repaid over 20 years through a synthetic TIF, which is different than if a developer has to go out and pay for the land today. Second thing is by paying for the land with public dollars, you don't incur investor and lender returns on site acquisition or infrastructure installation. Third thing is you would employ just-in-time inventory management for home builders so that they don't have a carry in terms of owning land, holding land, insuring land, et cetera. And the fourth thing, this builds on existing county and bank incentive programs. So I'll stop there and turn this over to Eric at Neighboring Concepts to go through the program detail. Then I guess at the end, we can do the Q&A. So I'm gonna stop sharing, right?
Good afternoon, Mayor and members of the study committee. And I appreciate the opportunity to spend some time with you all this afternoon. And it's always good to see Ron and Willie. We really enjoy working with them on the coalition. And we always learn when we work with communities like Smithville. And I would also say that Smithville and the town of Cornelius is very fortunate to have someone with Willie's expertise providing the type of input that he's providing. I mean, we've worked in a lot of communities and a lot of neighborhoods. And I think if we had someone like Willie involved in those communities, I think we would have really done a much better job with minimizing gentrification. And so I just want to say, but just for those of you who are not familiar with Neighboring Concepts, I'm Darrell Williams and co-founder of the firm over 24 years ago. And just to give you a brief overview of Neighboring Concepts, and then I'll talk a little bit about some of the projects we've been involved in and talk about why I think government involvement in redevelopment in communities like Smithville is so important. And then Eric will talk more about the Smithville plan. But Neighboring Concepts started over 24 years ago, and we're, as you can tell by the name, we're not a traditional architecture firm. We started working in neighborhoods like Smithville. Here in Charlotte, we probably worked in most of the urban neighborhoods in Charlotte in some capacity. Whether that's a lot of the public housing redevelopments, we've been involved with most of them. And the reason why is because when we started the firm, we wanted to go and help and be involved in communities like the ones that I grew up in. There are neighborhoods like this all over the country. And unfortunately, we don't do enough to make sure that the people who live in those communities and those communities themselves, that they continue to thrive like other parts of our community. And so we've went in and to work with them to develop plans to make sure that they can be a part of the solution to help change their community. And a lot of that includes a lot of engagement. We worked a lot with the coalition. We got involved with some neighborhood meetings with Smithville, but a lot of it is engaging with the community, engaging with stakeholders, whether it's the residents in the community, businesses, government leaders, potential donors, just making sure that everyone is involved in that process. So everyone will have ownership, when it's all done, and be a part of that community. And so, we've had the opportunity to really get involved. And one of the things we've done, we've actually volunteered through the American Institute of Architects in a program called Sustainable Development Assistant Team, SDAT. And this was a little town called Helper in Utah, where we actually won a national facilitation award by helping this community come up with a plan and a vision for its community, utilizing several experts from around the country to help participate in this community. So AIA does that all over the country. They go into communities and help them develop a vision. And so I think that, and this is just shows some work that we've done throughout Charlotte. We focus on helping to transform communities. In most cases, communities that a lot of people don't want to go to. We try to make sure that those communities are thriving, that people who live in those communities have an opportunity to remain if they want to. But these are some of the projects we've been involved in. This is Ramir Ben Park here in Charlotte that we've had the opportunity to work in. A lot of recreational projects, a lot of transit projects. But the firm started working in neighborhoods, and we continue to do that because that's a part of who we are. We feel like we get the opportunity to work on buildings like the ones you're seeing on the screen, like most architects. But what we're really passionate about is providing our expertise to help improve neighborhoods and communities like Smithville. And so that's what get us excited about going to work every morning. And this is a project we're doing right across from John C. Smith at 5 Points. We've been working with AECOM in the city to redevelop one of the corners right there near John C. Smith, where West Trade comes into Rogers Ferry Road. The city is putting some money into helping to improve this intersection here. But one of the reasons why, and again, these are just some photographs. Eric, just go through these pretty quick. These are just some photographs of our engagement. And this is a project that Willie is familiar with. We got involved with helping. We did a master plan for St. Paul Baptist Church several years ago. And they later on, they got a developer to come in and actually develop this master plan using a lot of affordable housing opportunities with the city, with the state, and providing some senior housing and some housing for families around the church. The church actually owned 4 blocks of land surrounding the church. And they were using a lot of that property for parking. And so we were able to help them get it rezoned. And then we continued working with them to actually develop the architecture. This is the overall sketch of the plan right here that you see on the screen. But we were involved with the developer to take these projects all the way through construction and get them built. And so, but this is in the middle of the Belmont neighborhood, directly adjacent north of downtown Charlotte, is where this particular project is. But this is just one example of something that we've had the opportunity to work on. To the right is the existing church, and to the left is the senior facility that was designed for this development. And Eric is going to talk about Renaissance, but my final comments relate to why I think it's important that government get involved with the redevelopment of communities and neighborhoods like Smithfield. And the reason is that it's very obvious. You know, it doesn't matter what happens. There's going to be some gentrification that's going to happen. And so the goal is to try to minimize that gentrification. And if development happens naturally, it would help promote gentrification in a much bigger way. If it just happened naturally without government involvement and just the private sector coming in and people selling their homes as they wish, is really going to increase gentrification in a big way. And I think the challenges in these neighborhoods, social and physical challenge didn't happen overnight. And they're not going to go away overnight. And it's going to take the residents, volunteers like Willie and Ron, businesses, government, everyone has to participate in order to make these communities better for people that live in them, but also to make sure that people could afford to stay there if they wanted to. I think oftentimes people are forced to leave because they can't afford to stay there. And that's what would happen if you do nothing and just let the natural development happens the way it normally happens in a lot of places. So I think it's important, if we care about all residents in our community and all parts of our community, I think we all have to jump in and try to help to see what we can do to help make a community better, but at the same time, make people better, as well as the physical, make sure that the social challenges that exist in these communities are also being met. And I had the opportunity to serve as a county commissioner here in Mecklenburg. And that's when I began to understand why a lot of these communities are the way they are. You know, the county commission deals more with human services. So we can go in and put in sidewalks and plant trees and do all those things. But if other needs that people have within their families are not being met, the physical by itself is not going to solve the problem. So I think it really needs government and everyone needs to participate to make sure that we could improve the community. So I'll stop right there and let Eric.
Hey, Daryl.
Yeah.
I want to get you to deal with that. You can wait till later if you like, but
Okay.
it never fails that every meeting we've had pretty much throughout this entire process
Mhm.
with Smithville, even back before you were involved and even Willie was involved,
Mhm.
was a matter of, well, what do people think? What's the consensus?
That's
Is
right.
everybody together on this, or is, well, you know, and really it gets very cumbersome. I know that Willie and John and Ron and Lisa hear this all the time, and I know they get sick of it. I get sick of it, but you know, how do you measure consensus? I really would like to get past that, because I think it's going to continue, not just in Smithville, but throughout our town, to be a little bit of a challenge as we march forward. So I don't want to let that big elephant in the room, you know, absorb us and create an environment where we can't deal with this affordable housing matter.
Yeah, you're right. And I think that's, it takes work. It doesn't happen overnight. You know, I think it just takes special efforts on everyone's part to make sure that everyone is included and everyone has input. And so I think, you know, but let's go through the presentation and we can continue to talk about that. But that's talking about community consensus. It's almost like talking about gentrification to a certain extent, because it takes work to prevent gentrification or minimize it. And it takes work to get community consensus. It just takes special effort. It doesn't happen by itself.
Exactly. I want to get that on the table. Didn't want to miss that as we move forward today.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you, Daryl. So I am Eric Orozco, the urban designer at Neighboring Concepts. So I do the community planning work help manage those projects. So I'm going to cover one of the previous examples where I think we just have done a lot of the most innovative thinking around neighborhood development. It's my pleasure to say that working with the Smithville Plan is probably my favorite, just because it's such a special and very grassroots-based approach to neighborhood development, and it's just it's been a huge privilege for me to be working with you. But this is, just to show you, work that our firm really, where we started working with low-income housing tax credit projects. It was this project called the Renaissance. And so, it's got a lot of accolades to it. It is the first LEED neighborhood development that is a non-pilot, built project in that rating system. And so, it's not just the buildings that are rated, it's actually the whole community, all the elements of that community that work to create economic and social prosperity that is being measured in that rating system. And so it's a very holistic way to approach development. And it is also mixed income, very similar to a lot of the goals that we're going after here in Smithville. It's called the Purpose-Built Community Project. It's built upon partnerships. So that's what makes it a very incredible project for us to have experience from the very first stages all the way to the last completed building. So, it does have this mixed income component to it. Most of the units are for families, but there's also 110 units of senior housing in the development. Like I said, it's a very holistic approach to design. This is how we are also approaching the Smithville project. So we're taking a very careful look at, just what the community relates to, the way that it's actually the neighborhood pattern, the sidewalks, the trees and everything how that's laid out and created, improved, how we, rescue and preserve the key elements that the community, treasures. All that is covered in the, in sort of the goals of a LEED approach, a LEED neighborhood development approach. It's also, we had an innovative design approach where we actually purposely designed for upward economic mobility. And so, how do we do that? We need partners, and we need partners that actually interact with the residents, that help them create programs and pathways for the residents in the community. So we also have a lot of the components that communities need to thrive, including adult education. And it's also multi-generational. So we're also looking at the social capital that's inherent within those, kinship ties, and the things that keep communities together. So that's sort of our keystone project that we show now. We're very privileged to be working now with the Asheville, an opportunity in Nashville that's even twice the size, but it's also a purpose-built community. And it is, very much thinking about education, the key amenities that are there to support that community. And so one of the key aspects is the community quarterback model. So there's a LEED nonprofit that actually is set up, basically to help with the continuum and with the wraparound services and the social programs and things like that communities need to break the intergenerational cycle of poverty. So there is a nonprofit that's established, with the community specifically to address those dimensions. And that, that is the Renaissance West Community Initiative. So this is that nonprofit task, that actually headquartered in the community itself. And what's special about that is that the community quarterback actually ties in all the programs that are available in in the civil and private sector, all the groups, faith communities, it actually becomes an advocate. And, government actually created this project, but it's sustained by that change in focus and allowing these very nimble philanthropic organizations to actually contribute to the things that the government can't do as well. And certainly, this is the way that you get focused. You get the civil society of your community involved with every key aspect of the community. And so that is a huge ecosystem that then the community is able to tie into. So I just wanted to share that. We are the architects. We designed the development center, the Child Development Center. And it's also, it's an innovative facility. It's also a training facility for childcare. And it employs, a lot of the cutting edge things like, in child development. Nowadays, outdoor learning is a key aspect, for example. And, this is their first graduating class. And like I said, a lot of the parents and the volunteers of the community get to contribute. They get to be part of the programs. The same thing with the K-8 school. It's an innovative project-based learning STEAM academy. And it's, it is a model that purpose-built communities often utilizes. So, this is designed by Little Diversified. This is not us, but we created the master plan that actually brought the school, Charlotte-Mecklenburg schools into the project. So it's just been, very fun to watch this transformation unfold. I just wanted to see, to show you just the potential of neighborhood development nowadays. Adult learning kicks into it because we're located close to the Harris Branch campus of CPCC. We're, related to the Southview Recreation Center. And so it also becomes a key asset for the entire corridor of neighborhoods on West Boulevard. The community is always learning. The seniors always have programs. It's a very, they are tied into the life of the school and the Child Development Center. And, these are, some of the programs and volunteer opportunities that the community quarterback brings to senior care. So, it has all the, it is a lead project, but, utilizes Earthcraft. The family units here are just Energy Star rated because of the lead requirements. And we're also still continuing to work with the community. So this is a new project. It's a food cooperative. So it'll bring access to fresh foods into the community. And so we're also excited to just still, continue to contribute to the transformation of the, of the West Boulevard corridor. And so, that's just the example. But I think we are working now on a model that's going to be, I think, transformational across the nation. And I'll just tell you that from my perspective as a designer, working with Smithville, I think we're going to see something very special that's transforming. So, the context is very good, for the kind of, especially for tax credit deals, you have access to grocery stores, local employment opportunities. So there are a lot of things here that why you need workforce housing. There are a lot of key, assets to be located there at Exit 28, especially with the what we know is the coming access to higher quality transit services. The whole family of services that will operate on the enhanced BRT corridor, connecting commuters to Uptown, but also connecting to the communities on the north along 77. So that's an incredible amount of jobs, of places that you really need workforce housing for. So We are thinking about the mobility hubs and things like that, perhaps autonomous vehicles circulating to just allow folks to have a higher quality of service and access to the things that they need. So, we know that there is a, potential for perhaps a commuter facility, park and ride, things like that, direct connections, to the station. And that's sort of what set the context, I think, for what we would decide when we began to plan for the, have our first discussions with the Smithville Coalition. That was certainly something that was on our radars. How do we create those workforce opportunities? And also, how do we address the need to allow seniors to continue to live in the community? So there's a lot of infill potential. The primary thing that we discovered, of course, is all the opportunities provided by those deep lots. So some of the lots are upwards to 230 feet deep and even more. Some are, way over 250 feet deep. That allows us to, subdivide those and therefore provide more opportunities for infill housing. So there's a lot of, latent economic potential represented by the land resources of property owners in the community. And so that was a key aspect that I think that makes this plan special. So we're introducing, new streets. We definitely wanted to, understand, what could also bring enhance the community character, protect it, and benefit each and every resident. So our plan looked at things sort of at a level that we don't typically do in neighborhood, plans. We actually looked at the parcel lines and things like that. And every decision that went into this stab of our redevelopment study, we really looked at how we could improve things, rectify, for example, parcel lines that are not allowing the homeowners, just basically the full economic return that their house could represent, things like that. So it was a very detailed plan in some respects, but we still needed to sort of vet out what was our actual ability to acquire a lot of these parcels. We did have, some notions that you see here, some strategic, first stage projects that we could start, but we didn't necessarily know that we could acquire those properties. So we looked at a lot of the elements that we want to, address in the neighborhood, like the drainage problems in some of those deep parcels. So there's a lot of standing water, there's a lot of low-lying areas, and there's also landlocked parcels. So, how do we address those needs? So, we thought of ways to actually address the low-lying areas, perhaps also introduce greenways. And then this is examples of our infill product in neighborhoods. So this one's in Cherry. This is a townhome project in Cherry. And we also do want to address, potential for mixed use, particularly, along Statesville Road and on Catawba Avenue. Perhaps we do have some residential opportunities, but we also provide perhaps on the ground floor live work opportunities and things like that. And so this was sort of our take on what Statesville Road could be along the neighborhood edge. Again, we need to address how do we create opportunities for senior housing like you see here. We also are, we could include accessible and senior units on the ground level. So this is like a stack flat product where the unit on the ground floor is completely accessible. And same thing here with our our quadruplex in Cherry. You know, it almost looks like a single family home, but it's really 4 units. The bottom units are for seniors. And how do we create actually multi-generational housing? Well, a great idea is, to have the ADUs. Granny flats, things like that we can also take it, see if we can take advantage of some of those deep lots to create, pocket communities, maybe more, tightly configured units, but that still have a lot of the, courtyards and gardens and things like that. So that's certainly something that we looked at and we want to propose. So this is sort of like our first take on that first master plan. So now we then had to work with see what actually were the infrastructure needs of the neighborhood. So we brought in Timmons, did a infrastructure needs analysis. So this is the old plan you see here, but it's we had them sort of critique it, but also see what we needed to add to the community so that we could do this infill development. So there were several things that didn't work so well. There's a lot of drainage issues here. So we did have to change some things. And the other thing is Willie began working with the owners to see what identified properties that we could acquire. And so initially we proposed the seniors building here in the center next to the Rosenwald School, but that's no longer an option for us for various reasons. So we then are now working, with other opportunities. And so I don't want to dive very deeply into this, but we are looking at ways to add that senior housing now. So there's a 50-unit building. So this is Catawba and this is Statesville right here. So we identified a site for the seniors, and so that is our. I think we're, because it's on the edge of the community at Statesville Road, it's probably a great site for apartments. And then we have townhomes that we've laid out. So this section is a mixed income, but it is on the edge of the community. And then in the center here, this section, you can see how we reconfigure things so that we create sort of like this bioswale area for the drainage, but also we turned it into a community green. So the community garden can be relocated here, and you can have a green, and you have some neighborhood green features. And so those deep parcels are subdivided so that you have the opportunity to build units on the interior that face this low-lying area. And so you can I don't know, like Latta Park in Dilworth has one of these greens in it. This is sort of that kind of environment we're imagining. And so here's South Hill Street and South Ferry Street's over here. You can sort of see how we are subdividing that block into several shorter blocks. Here is primarily this will be all the for sale that Willie has identified that we could parcel, and because of the neighborhood green feature, I think we can create some really inviting lots to sell. And here again is on the south side of South Hill Street. So the new roundabout that's being created is here, and we'll have an exit towards it. And then we'll put single family units where we can, and it makes sense. And this is also a for sale, is imagined as a for sale area. And then we have section 4, which is the south section of the neighborhood. And so here's the Smithville Lane, Weather Street is over here, and the new Nanny Potts is right here. So what we want to create is sort of like a cottage court over here. you know, it's facing that you know, that stream area. And then here is another opportunity to provide senior housing. And so there are things that we are, you know, it'll be there's going to be a combination here of for sale and for rent. I should stress that this model is what you're seeing on the plan is actually a three-dimensional model. This is the base plan. And the reason we're creating that is so that we can actually discuss three-dimensionally with the property owners and the town of Cornelius. It's also what we are looking at is also just the first proposal. So this is getting Willie's program that he just went over into the physical form. This is what it is currently. So here in the south, so we are looking at the portion south here of Nanny Potts Lane. There is potential there to add housing. And so we do have, again, a combination of for sale and for rent units that we are studying. And perhaps we have a clubhouse and amenity area there somewhere in the middle. Over here on that edge, these are new homes that are being added. And these are new townhomes that are facing that potential greenway that will navigate along the power line easement. And so that's where we are right now. The next step for us would be to actually engineer this. So this is just a layout study of our, you know, architectural take, you know, of products that we have here in the office. So these are our, you know, already built units. But, you know, the next step will be actually do the engineering to see how it actually works. So we are creating this to have those discussions, to actually have the design discussions that we need to. And so I'll close our portion of it.
Thank you, Eric, and thank you, Daryl. Wayne, you have anything to add, or are we ready to go for some questions and comments from the group?
Can you hear me, Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Okay, just a few comments. When we sent the agenda out, we put several questions on the agenda for the group to generate discussion after these presentations. The first question, and that we're going to ask this question after every single presentation and in every meeting. The overarching question that we have is, should Cornelius have a housing plan? And as I mentioned earlier, we currently do not have one. And part of when we get to the very end of this in January, after we ask this question to you about 5 times, is should we have a plan and how comprehensive should it be? So after today's presentation, we're interested from the committee in how much should the town be involved in redevelopment and revitalization? How much should we be involved with Smithville or any other community that you might see needs redevelopment? And as the mayor mentioned earlier, and as we were talking to Daryl, it's very important to reach consensus. You know, there's a lot of discussion. Well, you know, this plan that Neighboring Concepts, while it's a great redevelopment plan, it is quite different from the land use that we in Cornelius are used to and that we are familiar with. And as we all know, a lot of our residents in Smithville, they are senior citizens. So it takes a lot of information, it takes a lot of education, because a lot of people, when you see something different, there's a little bit of a fear factor there. And that's not just with seniors, that's with all of us. So as you go down some of those questions, Mayor, we certainly want to allow the committee members to talk in these last 30 minutes about where are you now with how do you feel Cornelius should have a plan, and should it include some components of redevelopment and gentrification. So, Mayor, I'll stop talking there and welcome any comments from the committee.
Yeah, I would love to hear from the committee. Ron, you got anything to add?
Well, I guess I might be a little biased, but the Smithfield plan actually incorporates all the things that we talk about to fight gentrification. And yes, I am concerned, since I am a resident of Smithfield, I am concerned about what gentrification will do in terms of forcing us into higher taxes. And again, the plan that's been laid out, it could be used for development in other areas of Cornelius, particularly Meridian Street. And yes, I do think that the town should be involved in it and should develop a plan.
Okay, good input. Who else would like to be brave and speak up out there?
Mayor, could I just ask a simple question? Just really, this is kind of out of curiosity. These plans are beautiful, and I know that the time that you've invested into it as a company, I doubt it was free. I'm just wondering who has been paying, where's the funding come from at this point for where the planning, for the redevelopment of Smithfield to this point? Where's the funding come from? Has the city been funding some things? Has there been grants from the city? Like, do we already have a foot in the door is what I'm really asking.
That's a really, really good question. I'm gonna kick it off, and then others, Willie and Wayne and others can step up. We haven't put in a lot of money yet. I mean, because there isn't a plan. There needs to be a plan related to Smithfield that, again, coming back to the word consensus, that there's some measure, not 100%, but some agreeable percent of the residents out there agree to. So that's kind of what we're really working hard on, because every time we go to resources for money, Willie and the group, they did a fabulous job in going through, I think it was United Way for an initial grant. They really kicked off some good stuff and was the I guess pretty much the funding resource of the plan that you just saw from Daryl and Eric. So that they did that on their own, and I really commend them. When I brought Daryl Williams' name back to Wayne and others at the town, they went, wow, because Daryl is renowned, he's well thought of, he has credibility. And that was a really cool thing. Now, there are resources at the county level, and you hear about all these funds that are raised in Mecklenburg County, or Charlotte in particular. I don't know what that fund is up to now, that's now invested in the Foundation of the Carolinas. But it's 50, 60, $70 million. We've been down there raising our hands and said, hello, here we are. We're in Cornelius. We have needs up here in North Mecklenburg too. Don't forget about us. Well, pretty much their first question is, well, what's your plan? So that's a lot of what we run into. There are resources at the county. There are resources at the within Foundation of the Carolinas that, an example is right now there are two places that corporations are primarily contributing. One is racial equality, both good, wonderful cause. The other is affordable housing. And we've run into that a little bit in relation to our fundraising with the Kane Center. That's going great, but that's what some of these big corporations will tell us. But there is money out there, but I really think from what I see, from my perspective, comes back to the plan and where we hope to go from there. So Wayne, I'll let you add, and I know Willie will have some things to add as well. So
thank you, Mayor. I appreciate, and Mayor Washam, you couldn't have said that any better. when you're in the housing industry, a lot of the organizations that distribute the money, we're what they call a one-off organization, because we ask for money probably every year for a small amount or every other year, and we get what's called one-off grants, maybe $5,000 for down payment assistance. We might get $20,000 for a sidewalk or infrastructure program. Well, one of the reasons that we're in that one-off category is because we do not have a plan. And the mayor's exactly right. When you go to the Housing Trust Fund or you go to the Foundation for the Carolinas, and they do want, with the urgence of Mecklenburg County, they would love to invest money in North Mecklenburg for a community like Smithville or Meridian or any other neighborhood in Cornelius. But before they will grant millions of dollars, they want to know what your plan is, and they want to know what your intent is. And that's been our one drawback, is that, as the mayor said, we just simply have not had a plan, and we don't have one. And so, again, that's the precipice for where we are at this discussion today. So I'll stop there and let others talk.
Let me push one more button out there too. Should the town be involved? I think that was a question. Yes, absolutely. In my opinion, the town needs to be involved. Now, is it handing out dollars? You know, we own, remind me how many lots in Smithville alone, Wayne?
I believe right now it's 11.
$500,000 worth.
Yes, sir. And those are out there. And, you know, we got them out of foreclosure, and, you know, because people didn't pay the tax for different reasons. We have accumulated $500,000 in property in just Smithville and some other areas of town as well. So that's one way that the town can help when the time comes. So yes, the town has got to be involved. We're getting ready to look at our land use plan now. That's a major component throughout Cornelius as we go revisit that land use plan. So Willie, I'm sorry, you're up next. You go.
A couple of points. In terms of how we got to this point, and who funded us, the Davidson United Methodist Church gave us our first grant. So we ended up with 2 grants from DUMC, and then we ended up with 2 grants from United Way. And then last, we got $250,000 from Mecklenburg County. And so that's currently the biggest slug of money that we're dealing with. I want to also raise two other points. One is you only get a plan should contribute to intentionality. That is, you create a plan because you intend to do something. And so I think it's hard to, and one of the things about Cornelius is that it's essentially a bedroom community. Okay, so it doesn't have access to the Housing Trust Fund if you were in Charlotte. It doesn't, most of the people who develop housing here are private developers, so you don't have a developed, mature nonprofit development environment. What you have is basically a bedroom community, not a lot of diversity, and that's the ground you have to plant your seeds in. And so I think I agree that we need it, but I want to actually push it one step further. When we voted on the bond issue for transportation, the town marketed that bond issue, and it was clear that it was important to the town. I don't think you can do affordable or mixed income anti-gentrification movements without leadership by the town. Okay, and so you talk about a consensus. Well, you also need a town consensus, and you need the town to lead. And so I think you can't kind of separate those things out. And and the community is the one who drives it, but the town kind of sits on the sideline and wait and sees what happens. I don't think it works like that. I don't know any place where it's ever worked like that. And so now, and the last point, in terms of money, I don't want to be cavalier about it, but I don't think money is our problem. And again, I say this from being in this business for 30 years, having fun, having to capitalize all kinds of real estate projects. We've met with enough foundations to be confident that if we can come up with a coherent, well-supported plan, we'll get funding. Now, is it the funding we want? Will it take, if we like it in 2 years, do we end up getting it over 5 years? Those are different issues, but I think the ability to actually capitalize this isn't a pipe dream.
Yeah, that's well put. Absolutely. And really this committee with representations throughout our town is our hard charging effort to do just exactly what Willie said. And that is to get the town in a leadership role or not. We have to make that decision. Now's the time. We played around with it long enough, haven't we, Willie? It's time to, either step up or figure out where we go from here. So that's my 2 cents on it. Others on the committee, speak up.
Mayor, this is probably a question for Wayne and Aaron, but why doesn't the town develop a small area land use plan around Smithville that is consistent with what we just saw in that plan? Right now, it's zoned neighborhood residential, a majority of it, which only allows 2 to 4 units of the acre. So who's going to come in and spend a bunch of money rezoning? But I could see private development getting on board with the affordable housing if the zoning was already in place.
Good point.
Well, hey, Matt, that's a great question. Actually, several times over the years, I think the town has stepped in to make an attempt to do some type of small area or land use plan. Matter of fact, as a precursor to Daryl coming in with Neighboring Concepts, our most recent effort was with Bill Dustin. The town was looking to do a land use plan very similar to what we had done several years ago with higher density and looking at pods of senior housing and things of that nature. But what we experienced was, and I want to say this the correct way, there's a lot of people that don't trust government. So they didn't trust the town to prepare the plan like we would normally do with our planning staff in other neighborhoods. So in our discussions with folks in the neighborhood, I think that's why the Smithville Coalition picked up the baton, hired Neighboring Concepts, and decided they would do the plan themselves. And we've been in total support of that. We've tried, and when I say total support, of the effort. Now, as the mayor said, we still, as a town, we have to approve the plan. And I think our commissioners are looking for that consensus that we're talking about because there's a lot of differing opinions in the neighborhood. But that's why the town has not done the small area plan, and we've kind of left that to the private sector. We just feel like there's a lot of, whether it's right or wrong, distrust of government. So we want to play the right role to be the cheerleaders at the appropriate time and in the right place, and then support them with whatever efforts we can. But I think in this particular neighborhood, it's a better effort on the private side than it is for us.
Enough, thanks.
Hey, other points,
Hey, Mayor, I have a question. And I do like the plan. It's really pretty to your point. I guess my question is, when we talk about that area, and I may have misunderstood, and we can kind of go through the plan itself, but as we talk about that specific area, the people that actually live in those homes, a lot of times they actually own their home outright. It's either been given, to them through family or whatnot. The biggest cost is basically their tax bill. And, we've seen that in just the last couple of years where the tax bill has continued to go up. And one of the articles, Wayne, that you had actually attached, it said that one of the, I can't remember which city it was, actually had some sort of tax bill freeze or tax bill reduction. So has there been any sort of discussions or reviews of how that actually could potentially benefit those folks that already live there, rather than acquiring land and basically having them have to move out of their existing homes into other, based on how I understood it, they won't be displaced, but yet they won't really be living in their homes. And I think that's the biggest thing that a lot of people miss, I guess, if you will, is that a lot of these folks don't want to leave their homes. They just want it to be affordable for them. And at the end of the day, I think that some sort of tax bill or some sort of keep the land as it is today, help those folks that do own their homes outright. And then if there's some sort of market sales or whatnot, then you can do some sort of an affordable housing process for those properties. And I don't know, if anything's been thought about as far as that goes.
No, we put energy into that. There was a bill in the legislature this year that didn't make it all the way through, but it had pretty good support for historic African American neighborhoods that would allow for some form of tax relief. We're not moving. Let me be clear on kind of what we're doing so this isn't confusing. If you live in your house, you stay in your house. Okay, the only problem we're running into is there are about 5 houses that we got to figure out what to do with them because South Hill Street is only 40 feet wide. It doesn't have a sidewalk. And so when you make that a regular width street, some of the homes that are already in the public right of way, that is, these homes were built before South Hill Street was a street. Okay, so once South Hill Street came in, those homes now are in the public right of way. So we got to figure out that solution. That covers about 5 structures. And then there are some utility related issues that gets us up to 6 houses that have a problem. And of those 6, I know we've talked to 2 who want to sell. Okay, so that makes 4 houses that we have to go talk to people on and work out an arrangement for them, which is also one of the reasons we're trying to do the elderly housing simultaneous to that, so that they have a resource if that's what they want to do. So those are things that we have to work out, but I want to say clearly here and now, we're not about displacing anybody who lives there. The other thing in terms of taxes, we have also structured in the budget several years of potential tax relief if nothing comes to the legislature. Okay, so we can hold people who live there, who are in the development zone, harmless for real estate tax increases. Does that make sense to you?
Absolutely. And I appreciate you explaining that, because when you first went through the process, the original, I think I got confused because it sounded as if you were there, it was kind of like forced sales. And so I appreciate you explaining that and kind of going into depth on that. And I think that if there is some sort of tax bill freeze or something to where it removes that burden for those folks that do own their homes outright, but that is their biggest cost factor, then that'll be, definitely will go into, well within helping them from an affordability perspective, and then, including that within the overall plan.
And Susan, one thing that from our standpoint that we'll check off to put in our potential recommendations at the end of this, if we were to identify this as a revitalization area under North Carolina statute, there are other means for tax abatement or tax relief. So based on your comment, I'll add that to our list as a possible consideration for recommendation that that's something we might consider. So we'll put that as, for consideration.
That'd be great. Thanks, Wayne.
Wayne, if I can recall, I haven't kept up with it, but I know many years ago there was some discussion at the legislature where seniors were able to stay in their home and maybe not have to pay property taxes until they decided to sell their home. So I don't know. I don't know if if that's what Willie was talking about, if that's something different, but I remember some discussion about that in the past. And two other points I wanted to make related to why a housing plan is important. And, you know, I think it's like any other plan. It's like a road, a street plan, transportation plan, a parks plan, a schools plan. I think the only way the only way to really plan is to have a plan and to know kind of where you're going with housing, just like anything else. So I think a housing plan is important. And I think the other part of it, when I was on the Board of County Commissioners, most of the neighborhoods I represented were urban neighborhoods around Charlotte. And one of the things I realized really quick was that I share with my constituents that government is not going to solve all your problems. Government is not going to do it. And that's why you need to have a plan, because if you have a plan and you can share with not only government, but the private sector, other residents in the community, other businesses, if you can share your vision and your plan with them, then support can come from a lot of different places. You know, but if you don't have a plan, it's just a lot of talk. You know, so that's why you have to have a plan, because if you don't, it's just hard to get support that you need to make something happen.
That's very profound, Daryl. Thank you for. I think that sort of brings it home a little bit on the topic.
Government can't do it all. Government cannot do it all. Government can play a role like everyone else, but government can help facilitate it with the understanding that help got to come from everywhere.
Yep, that's certainly well put. Who else has some input or questions out there?
Mayor, this is Joe Roy. I wrote down trust because I heard that. I've heard it before from the Smithfield folks, and I know you and Wayne are driving the point if the town should be involved, and I figure there's smarter people on this committee that could help on that, but I just don't know if the town being involved makes people trust it more or if it doesn't. But seems like trust is like the one thing, having a plan like Daryl's talking about, and getting people involved, not to Willie's point about money. I think money is absolutely out there. I think philanthropy, instead of asking for money, we need to ask for volunteers. Because I find even with my family that when we volunteer in something, we really start to understand, and it's easy to give. It's easy to jump in. I just the trust thing. I don't blame them. You know, I don't blame them for wondering. You know, are they going to get taken here? But however we can bridge that gap. Sharing this plan. I mean, it is a gorgeous plan. Daryl, your point about Willie earlier, I've met Willie. I've talked to him several times. I think he's a blessing. You know, I think he's an absolute blessing that could get this to make this a reality. I mean, so I'd like to prop him up where we can. And then just a couple of comments about opportunities. So Matt had asked about zoning. I almost think that zoning not being in place right now is going to help our plan to get there. If you had some zoning in place, I could see where people would take advantage and probably put things out there that we may not really want, strategically want where we'd like to. I know this is a tall order, but the power line easement, there's a whole lot of land sitting there. If Duke is not going to use that, if they could reduce it from 200 to 100, whatever, that seems like some golden property there that we could possibly take advantage of. I know that's a long game, but Mayor, you may have something on that. I drove Nanny Potts the other day for the first time, and I was disappointed to see Smithfield Road wasn't extended. I don't know understand that, and I saw it on the plan that Eric was showing earlier. That's a little confusing to me. It looks like connectivity, and it also probably provides some opportunity for more density.
Yeah, let me just say, Joe, that that is on the plan, and I'm glad it's on the plan, but that comes back to one of those consensus matters as it relates to what does the neighborhood want.
Yeah.
So we'll get there. I know that Willie has heard me say that, and Ron and others, and they certainly support that. And I believe we'll have a point in time that we'll just jump in and just make that happen.
Right. That about covers. I get to say a lot more, but it's really the same ideas. So I hope to see it happen, guys. I'm really, it's encouraging.
Yeah, well, this has played a major leadership role, which has got us to where we are in thinking about affordable housing in our town overall. So,
I'm sorry, Mayor. One more thing. Willie was talking about a price point that he was thinking we were going to achieve. I missed how you were coming up with the land price, and but I heard your total dollar amount, and I'm hoping we could get under there, Willie. I mean, I'm not afraid of being in the building industry. I'm not afraid of meeting those numbers, and I do think they're achievable, and they could be. They could have a lot of the components in those elevations they were showing. So that's it.
Yeah, can I just maybe quickly, this is kind of conservative, Joe, because there's nothing worse than putting something out and then having egg on your face.
Right.
At a later date. The assumptions in this were on the higher end of the spectrum. And of the builders I've talked to, they're guessing at $20, $21, but we tried to be safe there. And I think the last point, they're surprisingly, well, I'm not sure I should be surprised, but there are actually a number of home builders who would be excited about doing a mixed income development. It's not something they get to do regularly. And so the key question is, can you structure it in a way that makes them whole? So they're not burning through their lines of credit. They're not carrying a bunch, unnecessary liability. And you can give them confidence that you can line up a queue of buyers so that they don't have to sit there with empty houses. And so part of those assumptions have kind of been baked into this, which ends up expanding the numbers a little bit, but it's better to solve for a problem than to not realize you have a problem and you run out of money. So that's the assumption and the approach that I took to it, Joe.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, one other thing I wanted to add, based on the mayor's comment earlier about consensus. And I may get in trouble here, but I'm just going to give I'm assuming that probably relates to the neighborhood relative to the coalition. The coalition who initiated this plan with some neighborhood residents. But I recall attending one of the meetings, and I recall some of the comments that came from some of the neighborhood residents based on that meeting. And it goes back to, I think, what Wayne or someone said earlier, is that I think a lot of people fear change, regardless of what that change is. They just don't want change. I mean, they're used to what they know, and they prefer it to stay the way it is, even though they know it's going to change anyway, but they prefer to stay the way it is. And I think the other part of that is that a lot of neighborhoods are not organized to do what the coalition is doing. I mean, it has to be a CDC or some other type of nonprofit, that's making these kind of things happen. And so I think that's another challenge, I think, that exists, because the neighborhood is not doing it, the coalition is doing it. Then you have some of those challenges of people working together. So I think it's still going to take some work, But based on the plans that I have been involved in, and based on the folks that I have worked with in the past, you know, I don't have no understanding why the neighborhood would be against a plan like this. Because this plan, with some of the strategies that Willie has put in place, I think are the kind of strategies that if the neighborhood understood it, then they would get behind it 100%, because it really helps to minimize gentrification and help them to stay in their homes if they want to stay there or stay in the community. So I just wanted to say that. You know, I hadn't even mentioned that to Willie or Ron, but I remember that meeting. And it sometimes it just takes special work to try to reel people in and make sure they understand this plan.
So true. I mean, that's a good way to, I think, sort of wrap this up. And thank you for doing that. There's no doubt in my mind, I guess an old politician said to me one time, you're never going to get 100% of what you want. But if we can get a big chunk of that, 60, 70, whatever the number is, then, you know, we're going to be on our way to improving what we got. So, you know, I'm very confident that we'll get there in Smithville. And I think we've learned enough out of Smithville that this can, you know, penetrate our entire town. And I think it can take us in some good directions throughout town. We got a lot of work to do, that's for sure. And I'm very grateful to everything the coalition has done, everything Willie in particular. And I mean, he spent hours and hours talking with the county. And anyway, we've all gotten to know each other pretty well over the last while, but we're not there yet. But we're making progress. I can honestly feel the progress out there. And I think there's many folks in the right places that get that. Wayne and Andrew and I went down and had a great meeting. It's been a good while back now with none other than Hugh McCall, who was very instrumental in some of this affordable housing drive that's going on in Charlotte. And just a very encouraging meeting from him. I feel like his door's open to us anytime we need it as well. So Wayne, what are we missing here before we wrap up? We've exceeded our time limit, and I want to respect everybody's schedule. So what more should we bring up before we adjourn?
Well, Mayor, I think we've had good discussion. We've certainly taken notes, and we'll collate these as we go down our road. The last thing I would say is just a reminder that our next meeting is set for Wednesday, December 2nd at 3 p.m. We'll send out meeting invitations by the end of this week. So put that on your calendars and look forward to our next meeting.
Wayne, excuse me. Could I just ask you one fundamental question? And it's probably a pretty simple answer. And maybe you covered this in the previous meeting, I don't know. But has there been a master needs assessment for affordable housing in Cornelius that the Smithville plan answers? It's a response to a needs assessment.
We have had that. We have had that affordable housing study throughout our region, actually. So that has occurred.
So there's a current one for Cornelius?
Well, it included, Cornelius was sort of the centerpiece, but it was North Mecklenburg. It was Davidson, Cornelius, and Huntersville. And it was conducted by our EDC and the Urban Institute. So Wayne, I'll let you add to that. And, you know, it's out there. You can go look at it, Michelle.
My purpose for asking the question was the trust issue that Joe brought up. If the Smithville plan is responsive to a recent needs assessment, I think it adds validity to be able to connect it to a needs assessment, adds validity to the plan. That's where the question was coming from.
Got you. Wayne, what would you add to that?
Oh, no, I fully understand that, Mayor. And I think there's some other intrinsic socioeconomic things that go into it. As Daryl and Willie are talking about, I think people's general resistance to change. And I just think we have to be sensitive to that. We have to work through that. And sometimes it just takes time. And so we have to balance what time do we have before gentrification plays a major role versus how we assist in that education process. So very good question.
Yeah, and really the clock's ticking as particularly as it relates to Smithville and the gentrification issue, because, you know, property values are at all-time highs right now. Bank rates are at all-time lows right now. All the stars are lining up for, you know, Smithville to be very different than what it is unless we do something quick. And I think the folks in the coalition and Daryl and others realize that. So, you know, I think that's a piece of what concerns moving this plan ahead. So, you know, that's the way I would see it, at least. So anyway, anything else anybody's got burning out there we need to bring up? I would encourage you to, you know, if things pop up in your mind, you don't have to wait till the next meeting. Feel free to send us an email or give any of us a call. We'll be glad to talk it through with you, represent your thoughts to the entire group, and you know, move this process ahead. So please don't hesitate. Don't feel like you got to wait till December 2nd is what I'm saying. Please communicate with us along the way, and we'd love to hear from you.
And let me also say that I realized that we had a time frame, and Eric went through that plan fairly quickly. And in addition to, you know, if your eyes are not too much better than mine, it was hard to see a whole lot of that. So if anyone would like to go through this plan in more detail, just let us know, and we'll take the time to walk you through it.
Great. Thank you so much, dear. We do appreciate that. It is a great plan. First time, it was one of those aha moments for me the first time I saw it sitting out at Union Bethel Church. It was amazing. It went with a congregation full of people, you know, around. So anyhow, but good comments, good input. I think we nailed it pretty much as it relates to Smithville. You know, this process is about Smithville and putting to use what we've learned there, but it's about our whole town too. So we got to get everything in perspective as we move forward. So thank y'all for being part of the group today. We greatly appreciate it. And we'll see you back on December 2nd. Thank you very much and have a good day.
Bye-bye.
Bye.